Let's start with the big one. Where does that Damian McKenzkie finish ranking the best you've ever seen?
Ludicrous. It's one of the best in this code of rugby union that you see. Individual, just plants of the ball. It's incredible.
But when you take into account the fact that he is half the size of Blair Kinghorn, like if you just stood the two next to each other, believably, like Damian McKenzkie could be his teenage son. And then he rides that tackle, he keeps it in touch, he somehow spins his entire body around, withstands another tackle from George Turner coming across as well.
He throws Kinghorn away.
Yeah.
Like his grip strength. The thing that I find incredible about this is even after he's grounded the ball, at no point does he go into touch.
Yeah.
Even after the ball's on the floor, it's not like he then slides out or anything like that. The touch judge doesn't flinch because there is no doubt. They don't even have to TMO this. It's incredible.
And the thing is, right, I think it's a great lesson for any young player, any player at any level, right? Whoever's in the situation, any winger, anyone finishing in the corner, his eyes are always on the touchline. He's never looking at Blair Kinghorn. He's never looking at George Turner. He's never looking at any Scottish player, any of his support. He's never looking for support. He's never even really looking at the try line. He's always eyes on the touchline, trying to work out how do I keep my body from crossing that plane. Like almost as if it's a matter of life and death. Like I just need to stay here and I'm okay. And then contorts his entire body round. There is no thought. He isn't thinking about Blair Kinghorn. He isn't thinking about the cover. He's only thinking about that touchline. I think it's a great kind of coaching point, right? It's the finishing equivalent of keeping your eye on the ball. Like focus on the basics. Focus on the try line and the corner flag.
Yeah, make sure you're in because he knows. Because it's very similar to if you've got a ball.
Yep, both got balls.
Yeah. Obviously, he knows he's used to the motion of getting behind him for offloads, for flicks on the back. Damian McKenzkie loves one of those. And knowing, well, the try line's there, I'm pretty much over that. Yeah. All I need to do is put it on the floor. And at that point, when he's gotten rid of Kinghorn and he's off balance and his knee's dropping to the floor, he just instinctively knows to put it down like that.
How often
so many players would blow that.
Would your instinct be to transfer the ball into the other arm and try and grab it back?
Yeah.
And it isn't. Instead, he keeps it in the one arm and bam, grabs
That's the thing, because he wants his inside arm to do that fend, which he does. And as I say, it's more than just a fend, it's a throw.
Yeah.
And then when he goes off balance, he places it behind his back. It is simply incredible.
So D-Mac was asked himself about this, asked how do you get the ball down? And he gave a one-word answer, luck. And in some ways I think that does it. In other ways I think it's just incredible instincts.
Instincts,
I think it's just like he understands the game more than just finishing as an art form. And it is one of the best finishes I've ever seen. To conclude, a really great game. One of the best games of this year so far, I think.
So if we're working in slightly reverse order here, Damian McKenzkie got given player of the match in this. Do you agree with that assessment?
I can't disagree.
Yeah.
I think the few players who really deserved it. I thought Gregor Brown was outstanding for Scotland.
He was phenomenal.
I think there's a few Scottish performances in there. You know, Jack Dempsey was great, was mentioned as well around there. Sione Tuipulotu was very good.
Yeah.
Finn had some great touches. Ben White played really well.
Yeah.
But, you know, and there's a number of all, but Peter Laka had a very good game. But for me, I think D-Mac was
decent,
like, if the All Blacks came up and won that game, it was D-Mac because he came on and turned that game.
Yeah,
in the end,
and that was it. Like almost every single touch. Obviously, there was a couple like he got pointed to touch early on, but from doing quite well out of a very good Scottish kick. But pretty much every involvement he had was incredibly impactful to the scoreboard, to like the overall outcome of the match. And if you judge player of the match on the person who influences the final score the most, then Damian McKenzkie was that guy.
Yeah.
The 50-22 that he slotted just before to set up his own opportunity to score that try, incredible bit of communication and instinct between him and Beauden Barrett, where he floods in from the blind side of the ruck to get into Beauden Barrett's boot. And between them, they spot this. I assume it's...
You can see the two of them chatting just about in the corner.
I assume that the guy further behind, i.e. McKenzie's the one who spots it. But either way, the two of them on the same page here, which is incredible.
This comes back to, right, the key theme of this game, I think. And Scotland were exceptional. We'll get on to them. We'll talk about them, certainly in the second half. But New Zealand are a kicking team now.
Yeah.
Their best attribute is their kicking game. Their attack is good. Their defence is good. Their set piece and forward play, good. Their kicking is exceptional. Their kicking game is as good as anyone in the world, if not better than. And this has become their key attribute. And you look at that 50-22, right? And it's such an example of what they do and why they're so good at it, because they think holistically about the kicking game. They're not thinking, let's do the 50-22. If they were doing that, right, Beauden Barrett would take it and he'd go for it himself. Or, you know, they'd flood in Damian McKenzkie into a tighter position and he'd hit it himself.
Yeah.
Instead, no, the entire team is thinking, how do we advance our kicking game? So, the first pass comes, you've got dummy runners hitting here. Quinn Tupai is in front of DMAC, right? So he can't chase, but like, because they're thinking about attack, they're thinking about these options, they want to keep the defence honest here. But by going 2 passes out, it forces the Scottish defence to come up a little bit.
Yeah.
And if you are on the Scottish backfield, you're assuming this is going wide, DMAC's going to play, he's such a dangerous player, we have to keep an eye on him. Suddenly, the ball goes in behind you. It's thinking about the entire game. It's thinking about how do we get the most out of this kicking game. Oh, it is by using everyone. It is by throwing 2 passes out and then putting in that kick, rather than just putting in that kick the moment you spot it.
Often having a good kicking game, and it's certainly in the case of this All Blacks team, it's a byproduct, a direct byproduct of having a good attacking game. So it will go in cycles. It'll be like a bit of a triangle, attack, defence, kicking. At the moment, we're here saying that the All Blacks kicking game is the best part of their game, so they need to lean into that. Now, if they do that, by the World Cup, by the next World Cup in 2027, their attack will be the best part of their game. Because you will find these opportunities, instead, Kyle Steyn, instead of coming up into the lines, covered to Damian McKenzkie, he's thinking, shit, I don't want to concede a 50-22 here. I don't want to be responsible for us conceding 40 metres and the ball. I'm going to sit back, which means they go through the hands. Quinn Tupai gets a 20-metre run down the edge. They're on the front foot. They can set and go again because they're quick into position. It is a constant cycle of kicking feeds attack and attack feeds kicking. And the All Blacks are the team in international rugby at the moment who I think best sum that up. I think it was France for a number of years, but at the moment, this All Black team, particularly with Beauden Barrett and Cam Roigard, who run the game so incredibly well, constantly pumping the ball in behind. After a long sustained period of Scottish pressure, Tossie comes up with a turnover, runs most of the way up the pitch, and I say most of the way up the pitch, for a prop it is. Cam Roigard straight away, he knows that they can attack, but Scotland are aware of this. So they have a full 15-man front line. They kick it in behind and they make loads of yardage off this. It's just another example of how they use that attack to gain so much yardage in behind and frighten oppositions.
New Zealand's kicking game is so varied. They've got so many options on it. You have Beauden Barrett, who I said last week, best kicking 10 in the world at the minute. Cam Roigard, an exceptional kick with the ball. And then you've got people who can kick and always looking for that in midfield, across the rest of the team. I think this is possibly a big part of why Rieko Ioane's dropped out of favour, and obviously there's other factors in terms of form and so on, but he is much less of a kicking option, and all the centres they're picking are people that love to stop that little grubber in behind, including the Will Jordans, including the Billy Proctors of the world, Leroy Carter, good kicker with the ball.
Lester Fainga'anuku tried to chip on the weekend. He's a left-footed option as well. So.
And so you've got all of these options here, right? Scotland went into this game with a really clear idea of how to stop it, which was basically, let's do what South Africa did when they won at the Cake Tin. And so Scotland's kicking tactics, at least, were almost identical to what South Africa did in Wellington. And it led to some pretty great results. Scotland kicked short and narrow and contestable, almost exclusively. Like, we're so used to Finn Russell sending those long rolling balls that bounce several times, right? And he hit 50-22 in this game. That was one of the very rare cases in which they looked for something that wasn't that short ball. And it also opened that up, right? Because Will Jordan is watching for shorter kicks because they know that's what they're going for all day. So by sending that short kick in behind, you force the winger to sit quite narrow but still in the back line, so you can make sort of 5-10 metres if you're able to throw a wide pass out there. We saw this a number of times. Scotland doing 2 passes or even one really long pass off, Russell in particular, and the winger is then forced to either fly up into line and out of line and try and cut things off, or is sitting back because they know there's a chance of the kick coming in behind. So by forcing that, the winger's always thinking about it, but also you can advance down the field pretty easily because even if the opposition win the ball back, they can't play off it. And New Zealand's strength at the minute is their kicking game, so they will lean on that. They will use that and they will kick it back to you. And New Zealand vary the kicking game a lot, but that means that yes, you don't quite know what you're going to receive, but generally you know you are going to get the ball back in a position or another. And it allowed Scotland to advance down the field pretty regularly and at least prevent the All Blacks from getting any loose ball opportunities.
Yeah, and a lot of this links into, we speculated a little bit about how they would use Gregor Brown before the game, but just how good he was in this scenario. So I actually got this wrong before the game. I thought he was going to be similar to Jamie Ritchie. Jamie Ritchie, who actually, despite the fact he doesn't play second row and Gregor Brown does, Jamie Ritchie, who is actually slightly taller than Gregor Brown, often is used as a primary kick chase option so he can bat the ball back for their wingers to pick up the scraps off. Now, they used these two the other way round here. So they would use Darcy Graham to go after the ball and then Gregor Brown to follow up so he could target the breakdown because he's extremely good at just being a one-man clear-out option. Or if the opposition win the ball, he can then go after and try and pinch it back.
And a lot of it is slowing down All Black ball.
100%.
Right? They don't want New Zealand to have anything they can play off once they regather the ball. Like if Will Jordan takes it in the air, and Scotland did a brilliant job of at least making sure they were never really clean catches. Like it was very rare, even if it came back on the All Black side, that it was being taken in cleanly by Will Jordan or by, Carter, Leroy Carter or whoever. Instead, I almost said Carter Gordon, very different player. Instead, right, they're coming down, they're having to regather the ball as it's falling, flop on it, and then Gregor Brown and occasionally other Scotland players, Dempsey and so on, can get over it and try and put pressure on the breakdown. That means it's slow ball, you can't launch anything off for New Zealand. So they have to play 2 or 3 phases to gain any momentum, gain any front foot ball in order to launch an attack from there. And when that is the case, right, suddenly you can't really play. You are forced into either kicking game or trying to do lots and lots of carries to try and generate anything. And if you're just inside your own half, you're about 10 metres from halfway, there's no point in you trying to generate from football if you're, 14 points up, even if you're 7 points up, as they were for big chunks of the game. So you kick the ball. Likewise, when the game is tight and Scotland got the tails up and they're looking for those turnovers and they're winning those turnovers and Gregor Brown's having a field day, then you kick more of the ball because you're cautious.
Yeah.
So in both situations, it led to Scotland winning a lot of ball back in good positions.
Yeah.
It was a really smart tactic. And yes, you can go, okay, they took what the Springboks did, which is a big element of it. But also, I think Gregor Townsend, massive credit to him for picking the right elements and setting his team up properly.
Yeah.
We look at France this weekend against South Africa, and they were a team who went, okay, we know the way to beat the Springboks. It's to kick contestably an awful lot. They didn't do the work around it, right?
It didn't suit them.
Yeah, no.
Their
They
personnel.
didn't pick a team who mirrored that, who could play to that, and they also didn't do the minutiae. Scotland did. You look at how good the escort was around every chase of where Darcy's going up. You've then got 2 forwards around him, just in case the tap back comes. You've got people there to slow the breakdown down. You've got Ben White in, who's the best box kicker available.
Yeah.
You've got wingers who can chase, Kyle Steyn being the big inclusion, leaving out Dylan van der Merwe, who is one of the most dangerous players in the world, but they left him out because they had a game plan that could work, and they knew if they were to execute it properly, they needed the personnel, and they needed to take it seriously, and it proved to be the right decision.
100%. And in order to back up your kick chase, your defence has to be outstanding. Yes. And Scotland, obviously having lost Steve Tandy to the Wales head coach job, who was previously their defence coach, have since brought in Lee Radford from Northampton Saints, a title-winning coach in the Prem, obviously got Northampton to a European final, really deserves an international gig.
Yeah.
And also, weirdly, that Scotland defence role is really kind of coveted, that obviously, Scotland are a team who pride themselves on defence. And I really like the green shoots of what Lee Radford's building in defence, because there are still elements of the Tandy defence.
They're still basically running the Tandy defence with odd tweaks.
Yes. And one of those odd tweaks I thought was really interesting, had loads of potential. And that is their use of their wingers was a little bit more reminiscent of Jacques Nienaber's Springbok team. And as well as this, when we were watching this back together, we kind of made the observation of clearly they've put a lot on Rory Hutchison here.
Yeah.
As somebody that Radford has worked very closely with before, he obviously in the Northampton defence put a lot on Fraser Dingwall and made him the boss and said that everything comes through you, you call all the shots here. Clearly they've done that probably between Hutchison and Tuipulotu as the captain of this team. So I think that's quite smart. That's a good use of kind of continuity from a coaching perspective. But the use of wingers. So here, New Zealand have a 5-metre scrum, and this is the hardest position to defend from. A midfield scrum, because they can go either way. If they get a bit of a nudge on, you've got the 8 and the 9 who join the attack as extra men here as well. It's really difficult. You have to gamble a little bit. And New Zealand, I think, completely take the correct decision, the right call in terms of what to do here. So they go for 8 pick on the short side with Roygaard running off him, and then they go for a hit and a boot off Roygaard. So they have 2 options here, and they go to the boot, they go to Bowden Barrett, and they look to get it wide, and you will see an unmarked Leroy Carter on the right wing. Scotland's defence of this is outstanding. Kyle Steyn comes up and just shuts off the pass, gets into the passing channel, just meaning it would be a longer pass in the air. The ball would be there a little bit longer. And the question obviously then comes to the back of that, well, the wingers in there.
Yeah.
Who covers if the long pass comes in? And they put so much trust in Ben White. Ben White starts behind the scrum in the boot of this scrum here, just as that South African style catch-up defender. They've predetermined that New Zealand might run this, and he can just get in the starting blocks and race the ball if the ball does go over the top. In the end, it doesn't. They end up going for the short ball instead, and Scotland survive until New Zealand have to go for a few pick-and-go phases.
Under Steve Tandy, Scotland was a bend-don't-break team. You could make ground against them, but the defence got disproportionately good once you got into 22 because it's really tight. And the system was basically, they come up really aggressively for the first 3 to 5 steps, and then they kind of sit off and ease off, and they're not applying pressure enormously. They're just trying to force you back and move the gain line forward 5 inches, and everyone is.
You can afford to give up 3 metres if you've already made up 5, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. So that was the kind of idea there, was yes, you'll make odd ground against it, but we're still pushing you back and we're still kind of getting up there. And once you get into 22, the defence is much, much better because everyone kind of tightens up. And once you've got the wingers involved in the system, it becomes really hard to find gaps in there. Something the All Blacks found this weekend, as they really struggled once they got into 22. The All Blacks didn't score a point or didn't score a try from within the 22, and they had plenty of entries over the course of the game. That Scotland system was really, really well drilled in there. And if you go on with the rest of that example, right, we see a large part of why, which is the work rate of the forwards. And this is later on in the set you were showing. They go a couple of phases in field. Again, Scotland make a couple of great shots. Roy Hutchinson's really unlucky not to win a turnover. And then watch Gregor Brown here, right? He's involved in this tackle. He bounces off the floor. And I know this is stills, but trust me, this is all in one go. He gets back up to his feet and then gets involved in the following tackle and rips the ball and causes the knock on. And it's that double effort, it's that work rate of both Brown and so many Scottish forwards are putting in at the weekend that allows that defence to work in the way it does.
Yeah, and speaking of just Scotland being on the front foot in the 22, and especially Gregor Brown, I just want to quickly talk about Kyle Staines' try. I know we flipped from defence to attack here, but whilst we're talking about Scotland in a positive light before we get on to what happened at the end, I want to get on a roll here. So they do brilliantly here. This is such a clinical try. After, in the first half, they'd potentially blown a couple of opportunities, a couple of moments of inaccuracy where they'd made opportunities and didn't quite finish them off. But this one is utterly brilliant. On second phase, so this starts with the maul, but on second phase, they managed to get Beauden Barrett on the floor as the first man, the fastest man arguably in that New Zealand backline. And then after that, they go, brilliant. What we're going to do is we're going to run directly at the next 2 defensive organisers on their feet, in Quintu Paia and Lester Fainganuku. And they get the pair of them on the floor. So yeah, both centres are on the floor and the 10 is completely out the way on the far side, still getting back to his feet, still finding where, gathering his bearings. And after this point, they just need to figure out, okay, how can we tighten up the rest of the line? Because Damian McKenzie's still on his feet and Will Jordan's still on his feet. They can cover a lot of ground between them. And once again, Gregor Brown gets himself into a brilliant position here. The overhead angle on this is superb because you can see Cam Roygaard is stood just on the inside of the left post. So he's trying to work out, but he physically can't without either going offside or leaving the defensive line to get out of the way of the post. So Gregor Brown just positions himself slightly outside of that. Meaning, when the ball goes in behind him, because it looks very feasible, he's in a really realistic position with his hands up to catch this ball, Wallace Satiti has no choice but to try and double up with him. He's not leaving his scrum half stranded to tackle one of Scotland's biggest ball carriers.
Who's having to work outwards round the post. Like critically, the guy opposite Gregor Brown is the post, who can't come up and make the tackle. No. He can only stand his ground. Good defender of the post, though.
Yeah.
Stopped James Haskell once.
Not quite the touchline.
Yeah, not quite, but, you know.
The best defender.
He stopped Toby Flood once, so that was enough. But the critical thing here as well, right, if you go back a moment, only Gregor Brown is here, but if you look at the setup from Scotland here, it looks like everyone is flooded into position. So the All Blacks leave 4 forwards on their feet, plus Roygaard, in position here to stop what is essentially at the moment just Gregor Brown. Brown then works outwards. At the same time, we have 2 Scottish forwards fill into that gap. And that allows, that kind of provides a shield, a screen for Finn Russell to drift out in behind Brown. And that buys the extra second for him to get out and get into position in a wider shape, meaning both Brown and Russell would be Satiti's man, meaning that there's an extra second for Finn Russell to throw that pass because he has to go into Brown first, because if that ball comes out there...
Blair Kinghorn does exceptionally well. He, again, runs a bit of an overs line to get onto the outside of Damian McKenzie, and what a brilliant offload this is.
It's a brilliant pass.
Wins the collision, manages to fling this a good 25-odd metres to Kyle Steyn, and the ball, again, to make the ball travel this fast, you can't see it on stills, unfortunately, but that is a seriously impressive skill whilst you're being tackled.
To lose, man. Yeah. Toulouse will teach you to do these things.
That is very true. And Kyle Steyn, to his credit, keeps his width brilliantly and scores the try.
goes over in the corner. It's a brilliantly, brilliantly taken try. Scotland were so on it and so clinical. And again, they follow up this try by doing a brilliant box kick and getting that pressure back and winning the ball back on halfway and managing to continue that pressure on New Zealand. And so much of that kicking game, and when they got to the 22, they were pretty clinical. The first half, they got held up over the line twice, they had a couple of really frustrating moments, but they then tightened that up and they managed to address the kind of handful of problems of just like, a lot of it was like clear out in the 22 and so on, and just like being accurate on the try line and getting to the ground, knees down and so on properly. But you could see the shoots in the first half, and second half they delivered on it, which is the thing that we've been wanting to say of Rutger Haughton's career with Scotland as a whole, of like, we've been waiting for those green shoots to come up in the second half. And I think like there's a question mark of, is this the start of something bigger? Because they genuinely could have beaten the All Blacks here. They genuinely played well enough to have won this game. Yeah,
that is it. I think, in a way, the scoreline is perfect for what this game was, because Scotland, their defence was so good that they deserved for it to be 17-all with 10 minutes to go. But at the same time, there were so many opportunities they unfortunately left out there that, as much as I wish I could say Scotland really deserved to win this, New Zealand ultimately managed to get that 17-point head start at half-time. And, that unfortunately, Scotland couldn't claw that back before the half.
And you mentioned that try on half-time, right, that led to it being 17-0. And I think it's kind of a moment of Scotland not playing to the whistle. So an advantage is given at this ruck, right? And Roygaard is picked up and dragged backwards, and it looks like this was a complete mess. Normally, the referee will call this and go, OK, we're going back for the penalty. You're going backwards 5-10 metres here. So two Scottish bodies pile into this ruck to try and just close it off. They've already lost this ball. There's no chance of them winning this. They put two bodies in basically to cause it to cave down so the ball is not playable for New Zealand, so they get called back for the advantage.
So it's a dead ruck, essentially. Yeah. But it's not.
But it's not. The ball is there to be played, so they get it out, and instead, if these two players have fallen into the defensive line, they catch them behind the gain line, the referee does come back for the advantage a moment later. Instead, right, they've gone into the ruck, and it means it's really easy for the ball to get outside Finn Russell here, and Satiti can get onto the outside, flood down, and then find Will Jordan running a great support line on his inside, just following on, just try scoring instincts as ever, running a classic cheat line. Just one simple pass from Will Jordan is all it takes to unlock this defence, because those two players didn't flood into the defensive line, they didn't watch out for what they're doing.
And that's the fact of it, is if you had one less man in this ruck and one more man on their feet on this blind side, it's not even just the fact that it means Finn Russell can drift out and cover Satiti. It's actually, there's an extra body that Will Jordan has to work around to get into support there. He is, I mean, it's an instinct he's world class at, obviously, but it means that he has to snake around somebody a little bit, rather than he passes the ball, then he ghosts straight through.
Straight line.
And he has the easiest finish of his career. I mean, he's had a few of those.
He's had a few of those. He's got a hat-trick against Tonga from cross kicks.
That's very true. Very true. But yeah, it's really frustrating that a tiny little decision like that from Scotland is potentially what's lost them this game, because they played so well, and also
margins are that tight international level.
100%. Huge credit to them for the fact that they were put on a warning 30 minutes into the first half, and they cleaned up the rack for 40 minutes to the point where when they next gave away a penalty in their own half was pretty much 40 minutes later. So them sorting out the discipline to back up that defence was really important. It's just kind of gutting that they didn't have that from the minute one,
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so where do you think New Zealand are at after this win? Because if they had lost this game, and they easily could have, there would have been major question marks after Scott Robertson.
Ultimately, I think you've got to say job done.
Yeah.
It is. We had a major scare. It's not that New Zealand played badly. I don't think they did. I think Scotland more just really brought it to them.
Yeah.
They brought a real level of intensity to them, and they showed them the level they're capable of playing at. And on another day, Scotland could have probably played a little bit better than that and potentially won it, as brilliant as they did play. But yeah, I think you've got to just take that result and say, we weren't firing on all cylinders. We gave, from a New Zealand perspective, we gave Scotland a lot of opportunities to get into the game, and we resisted and we survived and we got the W.
I think New Zealand are in a big phase of trust the process.
Yeah.
And they have a process that works, and we saw that this week, right? And every now and again, there have been games where you saw it against Argentina in the Rugby Championship, against South Africa in particular, the Cake Tin, where they have been playing this game plan that is very conservative, very kick-heavy, and yet occasionally opportunities open up and they score this brilliant worldy try, and then they go back to kind of kicking the lever off it and hanging high bombs and getting pressure on those, and Bowden Barrett booting in miles. And then something goes against them and they lose the game from there because they lose their heads a little bit. And I think it was really important for Scott Robertson and his team to have a game where that seemed to be happening, and they recovered and they won it from there. And I know they'll be saying we've never lost to Scotland, we should be in that position. Scotland are really good. This is a really good Scotland team. You know, they've just torn that USA side open.
History's history. This is now.
Exactly. And you've got to go, well, the All Blacks are currently, what, the third best team in the world, right? Scotland are, what, 7 or 8? The gaps are not that tight at the minute. Like, the top 10 can all beat each other at any time.
International rugby's in such a good position at the moment.
It really is. Wales aside, of
yeah.
course. And everyone can beat everyone. And we had one of those days where that could have come, and they trust the process, and they won the game. That game was won by their kicking game. Yeah. It was won in the end by a 50-22 that they knocked in, and by continuing after that to do kick pressure. Like, that penalty comes off kick pressure, comes from Peter Lakai, who I thought had a brilliant game we haven't really talked about.
Outstanding.
And is one of the stories this autumn, quietly, like the way he's nailed down that All Black 8 shirt, kind of out of nowhere. Not out of nowhere, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
No one had him pinned in as a definite All Black starter. I think he possibly is now.
Certainly no one outside of New Zealand would have had that. But he's really announced himself.
Yeah. And him coming off a huge turnover, off a 22 dropout, from just being incredibly alert and looking for those opportunities at all times and putting in situations where Scotland will find difficult places to run back from so they can target that breakdown around it. And I just think like this was a really important game for the All Blacks. Yeah. And then picking up a bit of confidence in how they win these games. And they play England next, and that is intriguing because they will need that. They'll need that process, and they'll need to be incredibly trustworthy because England are the most trusted process team in the world.
Yeah, and they bring a very different style of kicking, which we will discuss in a different video.
We will.
Preview.
Quick words on Scotland.
Yes.
Is this a good thing, or is this another missed opportunity?
I think the two can exist at the same time.
It's both, isn't it?
Yeah, that they can really kick themselves that they've not beaten the All Blacks in this era. They've not had that destiny day. But also, they were brilliant. And there is another world in which the All Blacks get that 17-0 lead and then they kick on to turn that into 34 in the second half. Yeah. So I just have to give Scotland enormous kudos. Also for the fact that it could have been much more than 17. It also could have been less than 17 because like the tries that they did concede were preventable. Yeah. And ironically, the ones that they held out were the moments of the All Blacks stringing together great attacking phases. But again, that just shows you how high the potential is for Scotland, that they could, on their best day, they could have kept that to 0 at half-time in a way, or 3 to 6 points.
Yeah. It feels like a missed opportunity because how many times will they be in a position to win a game against the All Blacks with 10, 15 minutes to go? It takes an enormous amount of effort. And also like planning an organisation to get the game in the first place, you know? And yet you still kind of go, I don't know, you've got to give both massive credit to them, and you've also got to go, well, the list of near misses under Gregor Townsend is so long at this point.
It is.
That it kind of feels like you're just adding another one to the pile.
Okay, so as we finish this video, I would like to bring you a significant... I've not done this on a video before. I'm going to bring you a really unique mic drop. I did Damian McKenzkie.
Oh, I didn't get that at all. That was what you're doing. Can you do it again?
I'm going to do a really unique...
Do you want... Hold on. Your Uge is Blair Kinghorn. Let's recreate it.
Okay. A really unique mic drop in the style of Damian McKenzkie.